Hello, this is Lisa Harrison, and today I'm speaking with Thomas Hughes from Texas, one of the co-hosts on Wolf Spirit Radio with Dave Corso. How are you today, Thomas?
I'm doing just fine.
We're going to have a talk about an interesting subject today, the Sasquatch.
Yes. Otherwise known as Yowie over there in your part of the world.
It is, yes. So we've got, Yowies, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yetis. What else? What else are the falls into that legendary category?
In Europe, Eastern Europe and Russia, they're called Almas or Almasti. There's also another name in Asia. They're called the Yeren, as well as the Yeti. And then when you get into Central and South America, they're called Sisimite.
Are we
So there's
are we talking about different races of these creatures, just as we have different races of us around the planet? Do they vary?
um, yes, they are as diverse in their makeup and the way they live as humans are. But there's also the, I guess you would call them Ewoks from Return of the Jedi, if you remember the little hairy people in that film.
Yeah, the cute guys.
Yes, they're also very real. There's reports of them in Australia. Uh,
Oh, I can't remember what they
um,
call them here. What
yeah,
do they call them?
it escapes me at the moment, but Rex Gilroy has done quite a bit of writing about that as well.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Rex as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you first come into contact?
Well, I'll just briefly tell my story from going to 2008. In February of 2008, I was at the bottom of the barrel, so to speak. I had, I've got multiple sclerosis, and I'd applied for jobs. I'd even interviewed for jobs, but nobody would hire me, or my ex-wife, who was my wife at the time. And I sat in my office outside, and I said it out loud. I said, "Okay, I'm done. I don't know who's listening, but I'm done. DUUN, done." And then I had the open mouth insert foot moment where I said the word but. I said, "But if you guys want me to stick around for any number of reasons, you're going to have to give me a reason to get up every day." And that's when I was compelled towards studying the Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And I also studied Dean Harrison's site over in Australia to look for or discern behavior patterns. And I was able to discern a few behavior patterns based on witness reports. So it just kind of went from there. And at the end of April in 2008, less than 2 months later, I was down at my family's place, just 10 miles down the road. They have 900 acres. And I was walking down a dirt road, and that's when I saw a female Sasquatch in person, and the detail was crisp and clear enough to where I could tell she was a female. I could also see the stomach muscles underneath the hair. Uh, the detail was so clear to me when I saw her.
Mm.
And then it just kind of went from there. I don't
So,
know what else you'd like me to say about that.
well, yeah, what happened next? I mean, you glimpsed her and she took off, or
Well, I saw her just kind of jog between a stand of trees, probably a 20-foot distance between two stands of oak trees. And I kept right on walking. The first thing I said out loud, I looked back down at the dirt road I was walking on, and I said, "My God, how can anyone call them monsters? She's gorgeous." And she is. Um, since that time, since that day, more evidence started surrounding me or racking up. I started getting recordings. I started getting photographs. And an Apache brother of mine, I'm part Cherokee or Salagi, and he's part Apache. And so I asked him to go places I couldn't go, cross barbed wire fences, that kind of stuff, because my body doesn't quite work as well as I'd like it to, or as it did in the past. So um, he was the ultimate skeptic because he chastised me a lot when we began this. He said, "Let me get this straight. You're almost 40 years old and you believe in Bigfoot?" And I'm like, I don't believe in anything. I'm simply asking a question. What am I seeing? What's going on here? So I'm asking questions. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't believe in anything. And all of a sudden, uh, he he was having to eat a big crow sandwich because he was seeing them in person as well. So the evidence just kept racking up with recordings and photographs and other things that he and I were going through at the time.
So when did you first actually make contact as such, as opposed to just being able to take photographs from a distance?
mm, well, and I would say in June of 2008, a couple of months later, I was out one morning about 9 o'clock in the morning down there, and I've never quote unquote had physical contact, but I've had what I call mind speak, what other people would call telepathy. But I call it mind speak because there's a whole lot more involved in a communication than just words. There's sometimes there's words, there's emotions or feelings, there's sometimes imagery or impressions, and it just all gets rolled into one, and you have to take a moment to decipher it. But in June of that year, I was walking down there in the woods. I was on a trail, and a female voice popped into my head and said, "Go down that trail." And I stopped and I said out loud, "I don't want to go down that trail. I'm going down this trail right here." And the voice said, "Don't argue. Go down that
Mm-hmm.
trail right there. Surprise for you." And I said, I just kind of laughed and I said, "Well, I'm the only person out here on 900 acres of private land, so the only person that can call me crazy is me, so I'll just entertain my imagination." And I turned 90 degrees to the left and I started walking down that trail towards the gullies. And I heard what sounded like a human walking in the woods, crunching leaves, that kind of stuff, in front of me because the trail, after about 50 feet, it turns 90 degrees to the right, heading towards the gullies, and there's a lot of brush and trees right there, so you can't see around the corner. So I quickened my pace as best I could, and by the time I got to the trail where it bends, the sound of someone walking had gone off into the woods, and it stopped. And I looked down the trail. There was a snapping turtle on the trail. Now, I've seen snapping turtles all my life. Not snapping, a box turtle. I'm sorry. I've seen box turtles all my life, and they're always in water. I don't see them anywhere but around lakes or ponds. And so, seeing a box turtle that was as big around as a car tire was definitely a surprise. And I walked over to the box turtle, and it was just sticking its head out. I pulled its head back in because I walked up on it, and I picked it up, and I said, "Well, this is a surprise. What am I supposed to do with this turtle? I don't want it as a pet, and I don't eat turtles. So what is this turtle here for?" And then I heard the female voice come back in my head and say, "Why don't you put it back on the ground? What a novel idea." I said, "Okay, smarty pants," and I put the turtle back on the ground, and I proceeded the 50 feet down the trail to the gullies. Yeah, and I stood there for probably 20 seconds looking around, and I turned around and started back out, and the turtle was gone. Now, I know turtles can move fast when they want to, but I should be able to see or hear the turtle. So I lowered myself down and I'm looking around and I'm listening, and I don't hear any scurrying in the underbrush, and I don't see a turtle moving anywhere. And so I stood up straight and I said out loud, I said, "What are you going to do with that turtle?" And the female voice said, "Well, I'm hungry." And I said, "Okay, you eat your meal. I'm going back down the trail I started on." And it just kind of went from there. That's where it started at.
So do they talk to you about life, about their own history or who they are, how they live? Have they shared much in that way with you?
I have had conversations with them about certain things, but they won't give answers directly. If they'll give a little bit of information, and if you can resolve it in your head, or at least come to more questions that lead to them giving you more information about it that are of a more specific nature. Then they'll start giving you more specific answers or more detailed answers. But uh, the when I first started interacting with them, the first thing I said is, "Are you from this world?" And I got a no, and I said, "Where are you from?" And the answer was, "We came here from a dying world." I said, "Okay." And as time went on, more information began to come in, and I began to ask more questions, and they began to answer more specifically. And their home world that they came to Earth from is now an asteroid belt out there beyond Mars, and it was called Maldoc. And that's the planet that they came here from.
Mm-hmm. The Muldock,
So,
that gets quite a bit of a mention
yeah.
in different
So
circles. Okay.
approximately 500,000 years ago, 500,000 years ago, they came to planet Earth. And so that brought up more questions, and I kept asking them, and I would get little tidbits here and there, which would lead to more questions, and I'd get more answers. But one of the things I understand now from inside myself, and also from asking them as a sounding board, uh, the pyramids that are all over Earth, they're all over Mars as well, and they used to be all over Maldoc. And so the way we would travel is we would focus on, go inside a pyramid, focus on another pyramid on the planet, and the energy of the planet combined with the energy of our thoughts or awareness focused through the pyramid would allow us to point or jump to or teleport, whatever language you would like to use, to those pyramids. And then, of course, if that pyramid was facing Mars or Maldoc, then we could point to point from a pyramid here to a pyramid on Mars or on Maldoc. And so that's how they came here. They didn't come here in spaceships. They used the pyramids
So the
before
pyramids that
Maldoc.
are all over Earth are actually teleportation devices.
If you know how to use them correctly, yes, they are.
Wow. Okay. We'll add that to the list of theories on what the pyramids are for.
Exactly. And so, back in 2008, when I first started interacting with, I'll just go ahead and say her name, Shona is the female that I interact with. I asked Shona, I said, have you ever been on spaceships or interacted with off-worlders? And her immediate answer to me was, "You're not ready for that knowledge." I said, "Okay, that's kind of an answer in itself. I'll just leave it at that."
Mm-hmm.
But that was her answer to me when I asked her that question.
So are they interdimensional?
Well, um, that's certainly one way of looking at it because of how we've evolved that word and all of its meanings. But a much simpler understanding of what they do is it's kind of like a vibration. We'll just say frequency. Frequency is a vibration. So what they do is they speed up their vibration or their frequency of their physical material, and that's how they are able to go through what we would call dimensions, because dimensions are just higher frequencies or higher vibrations, a faster rate, in other words, of existing.
So you said Shona is the female that you communicate with. Um, is there a family unit there? Does she have a partner? Do you communicate with him, or is there a male that you communicate that's not connected to her?
Well, she does have a mate, and I have seen him in person. That didn't happen until 2009, when I was ready to see him, and I saw him in the daylight. You have to understand, I'm 6 feet 7 inches tall, or 1.98 meters tall, if you want to put it in metrics. Uh, and I would say that he's roughly twice my size.
Holy,
Yeah.
holy,
Yeah.
what?
He's somewhere between 11 and 12 feet tall, and it was a moment of frustration for me when I saw him because I have a vertigo, which means I can walk like a drunk man with no alcohol involved whatsoever. And so I looked at him and watched him for 45 seconds. I would say he's somewhere between 5 and 6 feet wide in the shoulder. And I stepped off the front porch of my family's home down there and took 3 steps forward. And when I looked up, he was gone. And I remember saying loudly in the woods, "My God, you're 3 times my size and you're the one leaving? What is this?" So,
Well,
they've
how big is
never,
she then?
she's my height. She's about 6.5 feet tall. Um, and that was another lesson I learned because they listen to what's going on in your head. And so I don't have curiosities like I used to. Curiosities to me are asking questions I know that I'm not going to get an answer to. And so one of my curiosities that went through my head one day was, how does a 6.5 foot tall female mate with an 11 to 12 foot tall male? And she heard me ask that in my head, and instantly she started saying, "Well, you do this." And I'm like, "No, no, no, no. I don't want to. No, I'm not." And so I quit having curiosities at that point because
That's a
she's
visual you
listening.
don't need. Yes.
That's right. I don't want to know. It was just curiosity, okay? I don't want to know.
What about
So
offspring?
they did have a child 3 days after my birthday in January of 2010. And she's probably between 3 and 4 feet tall now. They're a little girl, their daughter.
And what's
So
their lifespan?
typically, they live to be somewhere between 120 to 140 years old in the physical.
Okay, I don't know why this question's coming up, but do you think they've got any relation to us? I mean, if there's a lot of theories out there about who created the human race and the genetic material that was used to do that, do you think they played a part?
Well, I'll just put it this way. I'll answer your question this way. There is a geneticist, a doctor here in Texas, Dr. Melba Ketchum, and that's Ketchum. So people can go to Blog Talk Radio and put that name in and hear shows that she's done. They can find other websites where she's been written things on there. But she did a DNA study using human markers on samples provided to her from different researchers. I'm not a researcher, so I'm just going to say that now. I'm a experiencer. I'll just call myself that. But in her studies, she used human markers to test the DNA with, and that's been replicated by scientists all over the world with samples that they were able to take from Almasti and Yowie and CC Mite and Yeti. And so what the findings were is that they're between zero point 0.4 and 0.5% different from humans genetically. So that's 0.5% or less.
Mm.
So I would say they're us, but they went in a different direction in their evolvement as a physical life form than we did. Because one of the things that humans do is we adapt the environment to us, whereas they adapt to the environment. That's the biggest separation or difference between the two of us. They adapt to wherever they're living at, and we adapt where we're living at to suit our needs or our wants.
Yeah,
You see the difference?
definitely.
Yeah.
So how do they live? Do they live just out in the open, in the bush?
No, there's a lot of natural caves that they make use of, and they also will dig their own caves if they need to. Typically, if they're on the move, migrating from one area to another, they will put up temporary shelters and then knock them down when they leave the area. So, but mainly they live underground in caves or tunnels, that kind of stuff.
And how is this? You said you feel that this was a response to feeling completely fed up and ready to check out.
Now,
How has it changed for you then?
well, the the underlying desire or want to get out of this reality hasn't changed that much. I'm still ready to go, but I understand that there's things that I agreed to because I won't use the word contracts. Typically, that means that something is written on paper or written in stone, and agreements are very flexible and fluid and can be shifted or changed to adapt to the situation that's going on. So I made agreements, and they've reminded me of that, and so I'm fulfilling those agreements as best I can, and um, I it's made life a little bit more enjoyable. But the elder, the old man of their family unit, he was the hard case that I was up against not long after I got introduced to them because he was being harsh to me. And it wasn't to be mean, it was simply to wake me up to the fact that I'm not human. I think I'm human because so many people on this planet look in the mirror and they think that's who they are. And the reality is we're beings of light, just like Yoda said in Empire Strikes Back. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. So I had to wake up to the fact, remember that I'm a soul first, and I live inside a human skin suit. And which is the total opposite or reverse of what Christianity has taught everyone. They've taught everyone you're a human and you have a soul, and in reality, we're souls and we have a human skin suit.
Mm-hmm.
Does that does that make sense?
Yep.
So he was the hard case I was up against, and he was pretty harsh on me at times, but it took me a little while to understand that it wasn't to be mean to me, because once I began to understand what he was saying to me, him and I got along pretty good after I began to remember and come back to my awareness. And so,
So if
uh,
your job or your agreement at this point is to share information about them, about the fact that they exist.
um, that's part of it. That's part of the agreement that I have.
What?
But there's lots of agreements that I have. One of the things that I do is I take energy that souls and human skin suits are not aware of, and I transmute it or change it and shove it back into the earth where it came from originally, and let Mother Earth or Mother Gaia, whatever you'd like to call the planet, transmute that energy and reuse it for something else. Um,
Is
so
this
I'm,
something that's
I'm,
just come on board since you've been communicating with them?
no, I've been doing that since I was a child, and just was not consciously aware that that's what I was doing.
Okay.
But other life forms have always seen it in me, and I have the evidence to show that because, when I have memories from when I was 3 years old of being in the backyard, playing by myself in the backyard at 3 years old, and the wasps and bees would land on me, and I would consciously know that they were getting the salt out of my sweat. So they were my friends. It wasn't until adult discontent was heaped upon me by a mother that was scared that I thought bees or wasps were dangerous, because I never viewed them as dangerous. They were my friends. They were my family, and they were just getting salt out of the sweat that was coming off my body. And so it started way back then when I was 3 years old.
Wow. Have you ever been stung?
Oh, of course I have. But, since I've come back to the awareness and remembered things, gotten out of the programming, gotten out of the adult discontent that was heaped on me, nowadays I have wasps land on me, and I'll talk to the wasps. Sometimes the red wolves that live in my house, I'll disturb a wasp nest where they built it at, and I'll tell them, look, okay, they weren't trying to upset you. I'll just sit there and talk to the whole hive, and they'll fly back into that little stovepipe that they built their nest in, and everything is fine. They don't even try to sting me because I'm talking to them. Look, don't do this, because I'll get a can of WD-40 and a lighter and roast you, okay? Let's not do anything. So we come to a clear understanding about things, and I just talk to them. I've got what's called Catahoulas, is the name of the dog, but they're red wolf, bull mastiff, greyhound, and beaucheron hound from France. And when a female has a litter of puppies, you just never know what you're going to get. And Charlie, my newest adoptee, is so red wolf it's not even funny. shape of a red wolf. He's coloring on his back and his head's more like a Bosheron hound, but he's got the red legs, and he even has two golden eyes like a wolf instead of one brown and one blue eye like most Catahoulas do. So,
So what is this? Are they giving you information about? Um, are they planning on coming out and making themselves known?
uh, you know, I've had conversations with them, and I've also had conversations with off-worlders, and they've very much made me understand how the law of free will works and how it is always observed. And because obey is a human concept or a human word, so it's not about obeying anything, it's about observing it. And so when the laws are there and you have the free will choice to either observe those laws or the law itself will observe you when you fall flat on your face from not observing the law,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. So, with the law of free will being observed, um, aliens, Bigfoot, interdimensional beings, extra dimensional beings, whatever you'd like to call them, they're not going to show themselves until the planet gets to where it needs to be. And at that point, everyone that's still here on this planet will be ready for those kind of things by seeing Bigfoot or aliens or whatnot. Their choices in life, their choices about where they want to be and what is life and what is not life, won't be influenced. So it's not about keeping things secret or hiding or anything like that. It's all about the law of free will and just observing it. And they don't want to influence anyone's choice. People have to make these decisions or these choices on their own. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So do they talk to you about a time when that will? I mean, I guess the easiest way to say this is, the 2012 paradigm. Have they spoken to you about this year or what? But they believe is on the horizon.
Um, no, there's been other things that we've talked about because it's scientifically proven in the infancy of science on this planet that from 2007 fall of to the fall of 2010, the harmonic resonance of this planet went from 7 beats a second or 7 hertz to 13 hertz.
Mm-hmm.
So it nearly doubled in frequency in just 3 years' time. And it's been at 7 hertz or 7 beats a second for as long as science was able to measure it.
That's right.
So it's up to 13 hertz now. And then recently, I was given the information about the chakra system because I don't pay attention to quite a few things because I just don't have time to sit there and study everything or don't want to study everything. And so the old chakra system that we used to have in the physical body, or still do have, that's being overwritten, was a 7 chakra system. That's kind of curious since we had 7 hertz or 7 beats per second in the harmonic resonance of the planet. And now we're going to a 13 chakra system. And every month of the lunar calendar, which is a 13-month calendar, not a 12-month, but 13th month, every month this year, that chakra is activating. So by the time we reach December 21st of this year, all 13 chakras will be activating, or the 13th chakra will be activating at that point. But the chakras as they go are root, sex, solar plexus, diaphragm, heart, thymus, which is THYMUS, throat, well of dreams, which is the one that we're finishing off right now. Pituitary is number 9. Then pineal, crown, galactic male, and galactic female activate at the same time. And it is the coming back to balance between the male and the female genders. Because at this point, Earth is ready to experience, and so is everything that lives on Earth. We're ready to experience male and female equally being in charge of everything instead of the females being in charge or the males being in charge. And we've all seen what happens when the men are in charge for the last 2,000 years or more. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Uh,
That's a whole other conversation. So, but where did
yeah.
this information come from? Did it come from the Sasquatch about the chakras?
No, another being spoke to me, and then I began researching this because I'm always asking questions. I don't ever stop asking questions. I start with when things are presented to me. I start looking at the information, and I'll say, okay, when is this valid? Why is it valid? Where is it valid? Who is it valid with? And I go down through a list, and I start getting answers, and the answers lead to more questions, and I don't ever stop asking questions. That's why I say I wish I had time to study everything, but I don't, because I'm always asking questions and getting more answers about the same information that I've been asking about for 4 years now.
So, can
Uh,
you elaborate on another being?
well, the I have contact with a couple of the beings that are on the biospheres that Tolik talks about.
Oh, okay.
Tolik, who works for the Andromeda Council. And so him and I have compared quite a few notes, and I've talked to him on Skype every once in a while. Um, but he's put information out there about the Dakota people that white people simply don't know, and we don't tell anyone about it. So I got in contact with him as soon as I could, and I'm like, what do you know, and what have they told you? Because you're saying things that we don't tell white people. And it just kind of went from there.
Okay. Okay. So they're the ones who've told you about this chakra upgrade.
The chakra system, and it's I guess you could call it an upgrade.
Hang on,
It isn't.
before you go on though, sorry, just to clarify, are you talking to some of the same individuals that Tolik is, or just people from the same biosphere, but different individuals?
I'm talking to different individuals that are on the same biospheres as the Andromeda Council that he speaks with.
Right. Okay.
Um, I've been called to an occasional council meeting, and I prefer not to go to those. I
Why?
deal with, well, because there's a whole lot of things that go on in a council meeting, and I really don't have anything to add at the moment. I'm part of I guess you could say, a collective that I'm part of, and my collective is part of a sub council, if you want to put it that way. And members of the sub council that I'm part of, they attend the meeting. So there's a representative that goes and speaks for us once all the data or information is collected that can be reported at that time.
Okay.
So uh, I was called to a council meeting recently. Um, and so was a friend of mine in Waco, Texas. And then there was a woman in Alberta, Canada that was also called. And we all had the same experience because one of the things I make sure I do is that I don't remember information like that consciously in the body. And I started doing that in my teenage years because it was too stressful to the body that I live in to have that kind of information. So I set ground rules from the word go. Okay, this is not acceptable. We're not doing this anymore. I don't need this information consciously coming into the body. The body can't handle it. And so that was one cutoff point. Uh, it, I cut it off to the point to where a tornado touched down across the street from me where there were in 1988, and then in 1992, because I was so successful at cutting that information off. First, I had a dream about it, and then 2 weeks later, in reality, instead of being killed out in my front yard, I made it all the way into the house and was sitting on my queen size bed upstairs when a lightning bolt hit my ham radio antenna, came down the antenna wire, hit me in the foot, and threw me across the room. So, yes, I've been struck by lightning, and that was a wake up call. That's the way I view that.
Do you think that your MS and other health issues is a direct result of the energy that you're working with and the contacts that you've had?
No, I've had to look at that very carefully, and I've discussed it with one of the beings that I work with on the biosphere, and it's right here on my hand and in what people call the Akashic records. And so the lifeline on my hand where it splits at, that's where I came down with MS. And now I understand why, because things on this planet, uh, we were able to accomplish what we came here for, what so many of us came here for. And so as we draw close to this time, it's not necessary for me to be here anymore. Um, but otherwise, if things had not uh, progressed to the point where they're at now, and we hadn't got to the point, I'm sure you've heard some people talk about how it's going to be another 20 or 30 years before we get to that point.
Mm.
And so, if that were the case, I'd be on that lifeline, and the split would have never happened. It would have never occurred, and I would be here until I was in my 80s, probably early 80s. I would have stayed here until then, but we were able to accomplish these things, so that's why I don't have much longer. I'm thinking within the next 3 or 4 months, I simply won't be in this body anymore, and that's okay with me.
Do you think? Okay, you're very calmly saying that you believe you will what, die in the traditional sense in the next few
Yeah.
months, or
If I was still under the program and go by what humans and the way they term things, and yes, I guess I would talk about it like that, but I know that there's no such thing as death.
no?
And so it's just a matter of going somewhere else. When I was a teenager back in the 80s, I would look in the mirror and I would say out loud, consciously, verbally say it out loud, that's not who I am. Because I knew uh, when I'd look in the mirror and see that body that I'm in, I knew that wasn't who I was. And so it was frustrating at times having that information come through. And that's why I set ground rules when I did about information consciously coming through this body. I'm like, I can't handle that right now. I can't be part of this reality and part of this world and part of this thing that's been built here and have that kind of information come through, because it does nothing but distract me from what I'm doing, whatever I'm doing. So that's why I set the ground rules that I did. And it just kind of went from there. But I know, and part of the agreements that I made before I came here, because they asked me to come back 3 times, and it was the third time that I said, okay, I'll come back with agreements. I'm not going back and being subject to what all these other souls are putting themselves through. And that's just one of the agreements I made. But there are quite a few agreements I made before I said, okay, let's do this. I didn't just jump right in like so many souls talk about doing and how they volunteered to come here. No, 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 no. I didn't do that. I knew what this was going to be like. I looked at this event stream or time stream, whatever you'd like to call it. I saw what was going on here. I knew what it was going to be like. And I was like, I'm not going down there and be a part of that soup bag. Okay. Just no. And so there were agreements made, and that's something that I've slowly been becoming aware of, some of the agreements and what is waiting on the other side of being in the skin suit. So when I say I'm ready to get out of the skin suit, I'm not kidding at all, not even a little bit, because I know what's waiting for me on the other side of this, and I'm ready to go.
What's waiting?
But uh, just about anything you can imagine, and my mate or the yin to my yang, or the twin flame, whatever you'd like to term it, she's waiting for me. Uh, and so we're going off somewhere, her and I are, and be the creators that we are, because all of us are creators. We're not regurgitators. And so
Agreed.
we're going to go off and create our own reality, so to speak, possibly in a grain of sand, and just live life together for a while before we come out, because I have jobs that I have agreed to also. Because as we go through this time, there's going to be a lot of souls in children's skin suits that will no longer have adults in their life. So one of my jobs, when I get through this, is going to be that of a babysitter, because I will be babysitting souls that are in children's skin suits until they come to their adulthood and a physical life.
Can you elaborate on that? There's going to be lots of kids without adults in their lives.
Well, it all comes down to decisions or choices that souls make. And there's a lot of souls on this planet right now that are not ready for the increase in frequency or the faster rate of vibration that is coming here. The biggest thing about that, or just the easiest example to cite, is the law of manifestation. And so, if a soul is going through a fear state about a bomb and there's no one around to counter that energy and balance it out, in about 17 seconds there will be a bomb materialize and then boom. So there are souls that are simply not ready for that kind of manifestation because it will happen in about 17 seconds. It's about how long it will take to manifest your thoughts into reality.
So as the frequency on this planet increases and the time frame between thought and manifestation decreases, those who are still living in a fear state will actually start to manifest very quickly. Well, we all will, but if you're in a fear state, you'll be manifesting negative things very quickly.
Right, and that's why Tolik and I see, I had the information come through me, and Tolik and I have talked about this because I heard him say how souls will be taken off this planet on the biospheres that are in this solar system and taken elsewhere to other planets where they can continue a third dimensional existence. And he and I talked about that because the information that came through me, he said this would be the last separation of humanity on this planet. And so he provided the nuts and bolts for the information that had already come to me, because I was sitting here going, okay, how is this going to be the last separation of humanity? I'm not quite understanding that. I'd like some more information on that. And within a couple of months, that's when I heard Tolik being interviewed by somebody talking about that very thing and what the biospheres are here for. And I'm like, holy smokes, really? Okay. So him and I have talked about that quite a bit.
Is there anything more to say on that?
Well, I would say most of America and Canada will be gone, population-wise, as far as humans. But there's a lot of places in the world where that kind of understanding is well known. Even though it's not part of this reality yet, it's still well known. And so we've managed to increase that number of humans, not talking about any of the life forms, but humans that will be staying here. We've managed to get that number up to around 45 to 50% will be staying right here on Earth. And, you know, I interviewed Scott Mandelker last year, and he spent a lot of time in Buddhist temples and monasteries focusing on this very thing. And when I asked him, when I interviewed him on Blog Talk Radio, and I had my own show last year, I asked him that very question. He said, somewhere between 10 and 20% of the population of this planet will be staying here. And I was in shock. I was like, that's not our target goal. But I've conferred with other sources that I have on planet and off planet, and we've managed to get that number up to around 45 to 50% of the population of humans on this planet that will be staying here on Earth.
And the remainder will be taken off-world?
Yes, they'll be taken to new planets where they don't have to go through anything like humans have had to go through here. We entered into certain agreements or experiments ourselves some 26,000 years ago. That's why well, in Christian terminology, that's why we fell so far from grace. But in reality, using Christian vernacular, we turned the Garden of Eden into the Garden of Ego. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the end of that time is upon us. The agreements are coming to an end, and you know, unfortunately, there's quite a few other races or beings that are out there that don't want to. They're addicted to us. For lack of a better way of putting it, they're addicted to the creators that all of us are. And so, like a drug, they don't want to give it up, and we're having to round them up and force them to go elsewhere because, hey, you took this oath, you made this promise, it's time to go. End of story. And so that's basically what's being finalized now is the rounding up of all the delinquent children. We'll just call them that, delinquent children, which is really what D.C. stands for in Washington, D.C., delinquent children.
So the people who are left will be living in an environment with a raised frequency, more instantaneous manifestation from thought, um, and operating at a vibration that will allow that to be more positive than negative. And that if people
Yeah.
do die, it'll be because they've put themselves into a thought situation that's manifested something that takes them out pretty quickly.
Well, it's not so much in the positive because everything is balanced. So the neutral position is always the best position to be in because that way the flow can happen between positive and negative without you being directly in it because you're in the neutral position. And so it's about all of us coming back into balance and understanding balance and being in balance with the planet and with the energies around us and the other life forms that will be here. This planet, as it is right now, will be increasing in size probably some 20 to 25%, and we won't even be aware of it.
I keep hearing this too, yeah.
We won't even be aware of it until after it's done. In fact, when we get to that point, here's another Christian vernacular. That's where rapture comes in. But the problem with Christians is they think we're going to heaven. It's like we never left heaven or hell, and your theories are full of holes. And don't make me tear you apart right now. Okay, beat you over the head with your theories and your egocentric stories. Okay, we never left heaven. We never left hell. We are souls that live in human skin suits. We come from source, all of us do, and we never left source. We never left heaven. We never left hell. It would be like saying that positive electricity is better than negative electricity. And as soon as you say that, somebody will say, what the hell's the difference? They're both electricity. Right. Right. And if you can make that leap, then how hard is it to make the leap between heaven and hell? They're the same place. Since they both come from the same source, what's the difference?
They're just perception, differences in perception.
Exactly. It's all they are. It's all they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So, one of the things that I can say, there's a lot of things that I don't say, and a lot of things that I simply won't say. I will say this: the time we're coming upon, as it is right now, souls in human skin suits, it defies human imagination as to what this place will be like after it's already done. But the law of manifestation being what it is or what it will be, you'll be able to think, you're in Australia and you'd like to go and see a Cree Indian elder in Canada. I sure would like to go and see a Cree Indian elder. And you focus on that, and about 20 seconds later, boom, you're there because you go into an agreement, a harmonious, balanced agreement with the soul that was brave enough to incarnate as a planet, Mother Earth, Mother Gaia, whatever you'd like to call this biosphere. You go to an agreement or understanding. I'd like to go and see an elder of the Cree Indian Nation in Canada. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. And your energy combines with the energy of the planet, which our skin suit is from. And then all of a sudden, it manifests, and all of a sudden, sight to sight happens from Australia to Canada. Just from a thought or an awareness, because you enter into a balance of energy between yourself and the planet transports through the air.
So let's talk time frames.
Sure.
Do you think that there's an event, on a particular day, whether it's the 21st of December or some other day, or is this a gradual yet very fast-paced transition, and the ability to do what you've just described, when are we looking at that?
Well, the real magical date, if we want to put it in a date term, the time stream, it's usually about the event stream. And even the Zuni Indians realize that. That's why their prophecies that nobody pays attention to. The Zuni Indians say, if this happens, then look for this. So they put it in a event-based
It's an event-driven.
prophecy.
Yeah, the same. It's the
Yes,
same here with the Aboriginals. Here, they're very they don't. They're not calendar-driven. They're event-driven.
right. So the real magical date to look for is 13/13/2013. And some of the listeners may be scratching their head right now, so I invite everyone to use the calculator function on your computer. We know that there's 7 days in a week. We know that there's 4 weeks in a month. So 7 times 8 is 7 times 4. I'm sorry, 7 days, 4 weeks. That's 28 days total.
Hmm.
And if you take 13 with the number of months times 28 days, you get a number of 364. And in the old, very old system, the 365th day, which is how long the physical year is, that was considered the Holy of Holies. And what we did on that day is we celebrated and sang and enjoyed life with that which is.
Does that relate to the day out of time on the 25th of July that Hosea Gillis promotes?
Yes, that is the day out of time. That is the transition. Just like there's a transition between daylight and dark, and also between dark and daylight. The
It's also my
morning,
birthday.
right, right. You've got the dusk, and then you've got the pre-dawn light. So that's the same kind of transition. It's the transition point before we start another physical year. And so that's why it was considered the Holy of Holies, and why 13 is considered a holy number, even though the Roman Catholics, which is the Roman Empire, they turned 13 into a bad luck number because they didn't want
Oh, they've
anyone to
turned
realize.
everything upside down and back to front.
Yes, yes, and over here in North and South America, on Turtle Island, us Indians, we always went by the shell of a snapping turtle. So if you look at a snapping turtle shell, uh, there is, circles or whatever shape they are, circular in shape, around the edge of the shell, and there's always 28 of them, indicating the number of days in a month. And then there's 4 lines that go up and down, indicating the number of seasons. Okay? And then there's 9 lines that go horizontal or back and forth. And so if all the lines added together make 13, and that's how many months is in a year. 4 seasons, 13 months, 28 days, and it's right there on a snapping turtle shell. That's why we call this Turtle Island. Aside from the fact that if you look at North America, it looks like the feet coming out of a turtle shell, and then if you look at South America, it looks like that great big head that comes out of a snapping turtle shell.
Right.
So the entire thing, North and South America and Central America, is Turtle Island. That's why we called it that.
So getting back to the time frame.
Sure. 13/13, 2013, all of the alignments, everything will be completed by then. That is the target date for us to have everything completed, to have all the souls on the biospheres going off to other planets so they can continue a third dimensional existence. And when they're first taken away, they won't even realize that it's happened, because on those biospheres, they have very good holographic technology, for lack of a better term, to where people, when they first wake up, they'll still be in the house that they've always been in. They won't realize that they've even left Earth until a couple of weeks or a month go by, and then all of a sudden they'll be educated, because life there on those planets will not be like it is here.
In what sense?
The planet will have a more direct say-so uh, in the life of a soul that's in a human skin suit. So if they transgress the natural laws, if they don't observe the natural laws, the natural laws will observe them falling flat on their face. In other words, the mother that is that planet will say, ah, you're done. You got to start over and recycle them on the spot. And they have to start over.
And what about for those who are still here? Will will they observe the planet population decreasing dramatically?
Yes. And it will be known because the totality of what we are is not in the skin suit. There's only between 3 to 5% of who and what we are that projects into this skin suit on a daily basis. It's just like in the movie Avatar. That's why I watched that movie 25 times, because there were so many things that I kept picking up on and asking questions about.
Mm.
When they put the avatars to sleep, it's just as though we put our human body to sleep and we come out of our body while the human body's asleep. Just like they did in the movie Avatar. That's when they came out of that booth or that chamber.
Yep.
That they, so it's pretty much the same thing, just without the Hollywood special effects. And so that's why I watch a movie so many times and why I got so many different messages. And I was really, really frustrated by James Cameron when he put it right in the movie, because I was explaining how telepathy works to people. And then he comes out with that movie and just blows me away. I'm like, damn it, he put it right in the movie. So when she was teaching, if you've seen the movie, when she was teaching Sully to ride the horse, and he connected with the horse through that thing on the back of his hair,
Yep.
She looked at him and said, you can tell her where to go in here. And she tapped her forehead. But for right now, just say it out loud. And I'm going, I've been saying that for months now about how to communicate with the Sasquatch people. You don't have to focus on saying anything. You can say it out loud and they'll understand what you're saying, because mind speak translates from your brain to their brain, and they understand it. They understand what you're saying in a very mind or brain sense, spiritual sense. Even though they may not verbally understand the language, they understand what you're saying through mind speak. So you don't have to, you can think it to them, but for right now, just say it out loud.
So by 13, 13, 13, what does that equate to on our Gregorian calendar? Because we don't actually have 13 months.
I'm not sure.
Not sure?
I'm not sure. I haven't studied that enough because, again, I've been too busy with other stuff that's been going on.
By then the process will be complete. The Earth will be even larger than it is now. By what percentage did you say? 20, 25%?
Somewhere in that range, 20 to 25%, because certain continents will be raising again. Part of Lemuria will be coming up, and part of Atlantis will be coming up right in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. It will be coming up as well. And so we're going to increase the land mass on this planet. Is essentially what's going to happen with Mama Turtle, as I call the planet. She's going to do that, raise certain things out of the ocean.
You said we'd barely notice it. Does that mean it won't coincide with major cataclysms? Or I can't imagine that these land masses rising wouldn't cause some.
That's kind of counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish with the planet. When I say with the planet, it's a partnership that we've gone into with Mother Earth or Mother Gaia to be as peaceful as we can. So, in case no one has noticed, the sun is different now. You can look at the thermometer and see the temperature is higher or lower, and it doesn't sunburn you like it used to. It doesn't feel as hot because they've already changed the sun. So we're on the sixth sun, as the Aztecs and the Mayans call it. And the sun is a dimensional doorway or a gate anyway. And it's put there like it is so that we won't understand what it is. There's a lot of people on this planet that do understand what it is, but most of the people on this planet do not understand what it is. And the NASA satellite even has, NASA satellites have pictures or video of the sun, and it's right there on YouTube, where there's a black triangle that appears right in the middle of the sun. as that dimensional doorway opens. And they also have satellite imagery of hundreds, if not thousands, of ships, little bitty ships around the sun,
Hmm.
and their satellite imagery. And it's right there on YouTube. So,
Yeah, ships entering and leaving and popping in and out of it.
yes.
Hmm.
Uh, so, that being said, how this will happen is essentially we will be out of time, out of the time stream. That will essentially be stopped or paused, like when you pause it on your VCR or your DVD player. Uh, Time as we know it will be paused. All the adjustments and changes will be made, and then somebody will hit the play button, and everything will begin again. And that's why we won't even notice it until after the fact, and there won't be any major cataclysms because they have the ability to do these things.
Who's they?
The creators.
Okay. So the pause button, does that equate with the 3 days of darkness?
It could equate with that, but again, it's not something that we're really going to experience consciously in these bodies that we're in. And aside from that, the bodies that we're in will be so different at this point. And I'm 6'7", I weigh close to 300 pounds. But if I stay at this height, and I won't, because I'll be taller, I'll be back in my true body. But if I were to stay at this height, as we shift, as we change, I might, if I stay the same height, I will probably weigh somewhere between 30 and 40 pounds, because our bodies will be so different at that point.
When you say at that point, you're talking about by the 13-13-13 date.
Yes, and some of us are going sooner because we have jobs to take care of and things to do in the preparation phase of this. There's a lot of children that will be leaving, and it will baffle people. It will seem like sudden infant death syndrome or something along those lines, because children will be leaving the skin suits they're in, or they will simply disappear and take that skin suit with them. There's a whole lot of different things that will happen, and that's going to start very soon. So there's quite a few of us that will be leaving before then. This year, by the end of this year, there's a lot of us that will simply be going and preparing for this. And because, again, these souls that are in children's skin suits, they've already made the choice. They've already come back. They're already doing this, and they made this choice because souls don't have a need for mother and father and parents like humans, like the society here, the program has boxed all of us into believing. Because our true mother is this planet, and our true father is source, where all the energy comes from to begin with. So once you begin to understand those things.
Well, so the people who will be leaving sort of en masse are not necessarily those who are not coping with the vibrational changes, or there'll be that as well.
It'll be that as well. Those of us that are ready to handle it, if we've already made choices or agreements, and I've been saying this since 2010. The only thing that stands in front of everyone right now is choice. So no matter what kind of fear programming they try to put you through, so that because that's all they could do. They can manipulate and influence your choices, but ultimately they're your choices. So as Bill Wood said, when he was in Project Looking Glass, they kept asking him which is going to happen, the positive or the negative timeline. And I've talked to him, and I said, you, in a roundabout way, you told them that both timelines are going to happen. Because he said to them essentially the same thing that I'm saying. He looked at them and he would say, it depends on which one you choose.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying the same thing, choice. The only thing that stands in front of everyone right now is choice. So be very clear about your choices, and don't let other people and what they're saying influence your choices if you're happy with those choices. And that's all I can say about that.
Yeah, there's, you were saying you ask a question and confirmation just sort of comes from lots of sources. What's been coming for me, the importance of the date of the 12th of the 12th of the 12th. and
Yes.
that the choices that we make and the focus where our attention is at that point. I mean, it's always important. It's important in every moment of every day. But that day in particular is acting as a gateway to what comes next.
Well, and what's interesting about that, if my calculations are correct, 1313 is actually on December 12th. That's what's interesting about that date.
Okay.
So, December 12th, 2013 is actually 1313 2013. So, we just kind of go from there. And there's nothing to say that my calculations are correct, but that's the best calculations I can do with everything that I take on or deal with every day. So I just kind of go with that. I have a contact out in California. Her name is Olivia, and she's been on Wolfsbury Radio, and she is a gatekeeper or a portal guardian, whatever terminology you'd like to use there. And we've both been on Skype with Dave Corso, and I described something to Dave that was going on near his house in Nevada back in late 2011. And in March of 2012, she was on Skype with us, and I asked her just to look and describe in her own words what she sees. And she began describing it, and then she said, "Oh my God, I got to back off. I haven't seen this in so long." Okay, that's taken care of. And I'm like, "Well, Dave, there you go. Now you know I'm not crazy," because she said the same thing I did, basically. He said, "Yeah." I'm like, there you go. So we were both seeing the same thing, and I knew what was going on there. And I made it very clear to the higher frequency individuals or out-of-body individuals that were manipulating their things there that if you really want to get sideways with me, we can dance the dance.
So Dave was being messed with.
Yes, and I had Dave go outside and talk to his cactus. I said, "Dave, how many cactus do you have around your house?" And he said, "More than I can count." I said, "Would you mind going outside and talking with those cactus and ask them to directly interfere with what's going on around your house so that they don't mess with your internet show broadcast anymore?" And the very next show we did after he talked to them, we had no interference whatsoever. And I talked to the cactus from where I'm sitting right here, and I said, "What exactly did you guys decide to do?" And the cactus said, "Well, it's easy for us to project the energy of a human in distress, and they seem to like that. And then, of course, they run into the needles that are on our bodies, and we just suck them in and give them back to Mother Earth." And I'm like, okay.
Okay.
So I talk to trees and other plants. When I'm in my backyard at times, I'll be smoking a cigarette in my backyard, and one of the plants near my feet, "Give me that cigarette, give me that cigarette." I'm like, "Okay, I'll put the cigarette out next to you, and then you tell me what to do with it." "Okay, good." And the cigarette, the plant wants the cigarette butt, the unburnt tobacco, and the ashes from the cigarette. So I leave it there, and about 3 days later, that cigarette butt and everything about it is gone. I don't see it anywhere. I'm like, "What the hell are you guys doing with this?" So that's some of the things I experience around here, just sitting here trying to be fat, dumb, and happy.
I'm gonna have to start
Oh,
talking to the. I'm gonna have to start
uh,
talking to my plants more.
that's something I've always aimed for. It's been a goal of mine, and it's kind of like an unattainable dream. But I see so many people in the world doing it. I see them being fat, dumb, and happy. So I got the fat and the dumb part down. I just don't have the happy part.
Why aren't
It's
you
almost
happy though?
like,
You're doing some amazing stuff.
oh, is it something to be happy about, or is it like, "Oh God, here we go again"? Okay, I got my seatbelt on. What kind of adventures are we going to have today? And it just kind of goes like that. I mean, I had no. Sometimes I open mouth and insert foot without realizing I'm doing it. So, about 3 months ago, I put an open invitation out there. Any life that wants to come here and share a life with me is welcome. And so now I have bald eagles that fly over my house, usually 3 or 4 times a week. I have buzzards or condors that fly over my house at least once a week. I have a stray cat that lives on the underneath the ramp on the side of my house. I have three dogs in my house. Two of them were part red wolf. And then the backyard late at night when I took the canines outside, I'm sitting there one night and I watched a black body with pink ears and a pink tail go up that tree, the pecan tree, and I'm like, that's not a possum. And there's possum lives around here. But this was as big as a house cat. And then the next night I got a very clear look at one of them, and it's a rat.
What?
It's a rat, a black rat with pink ears and a pink tail, and it's as big as a house cat. I'm going, okay, I invited life in. Let's come to an agreement right now. You guys do your thing and respect me, and I'll let you do your thing, and I'll respect you. And so the rats and I have an agreement out in the backyard, and it's just the way it goes. I can't make this stuff up. I mean, I keep thinking that I'm Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but I'm not Snow White, and there's no Seven Dwarfs around, so, you know.
There's no birds singing around your head.
Exactly.
Helping you put your clothes on in the morning.
It's right back to where it was when I was a kid growing up and having all sorts of life forms come around me. Dogs would come around me and be my friends instantly. Adults would be afraid of those dogs because they'd be aggressive towards the adults, and I'd just walk over and, how you doing? And rub them behind the ears and give them a big hug. And dogs loved me. Same thing with cats. I used to have cats come up and start rubbing on me when I was a kid. And my mother would freak out, get that cat away. You're going to get something from that cat. I was like,
it
okay.
Sounds to me like you got lots to be happy about.
Yeah, just when I say fat, dumb, and happy, I'm referring to what I see going around me all the time. Other humans make it look so easy because they're fat, dumb, and happy, but they don't have the awareness that I do. So that's probably why it works so well for them.
So what brings you pain?
What used to bring me pain was the rejection I took for quite a bit of my life from other humans around me because I was so different.
Right.
You know, I was either too fat or too tall, or I had really strange points of view, and I was like, okay. So I just kind of let it go, or that's energy that I would transmute, whether I realized I was transmitting it or not. And it just kind of went from there.
Well, what about now, though? I mean, you know who you are. You know what you are.
Yeah. I just had a fella move into this place here. He comes in his own motorhome or RV. And so his RV is parked in the backyard, and we've got water and electricity and internet hooked up, so he can live his life out there. He didn't actually move in the house, but he lives here. And he's a friend of mine. And then I've got a roommate that lives in the back because she had no place to go. She has no family left, and she had no place to go. And I opened mouth and insert foot again over Skype, and I said to her, if you can't find any place else to go, you can move here. And so in 2009, she moved here.
So you've got good people around you now?
Yes. And I also have very troubled people around me. Right next door, where the people that sold me this house, where they used to live, they sold the house to some young people that are very Christian, and they're full of holy zeal and other things. And so I don't associate with them much, and vice versa. They don't associate with me very much. They consider me to be psycho because I've seen Sasquatch, and I'm okay with that. There's a lot of people that call me crazy and hoaxer and delusional, and I don't know. I can't tell you how many disparaging comments I've taken for the last 4.5 years, and I'm like, if you're brave enough, why don't you go sit in the woods with me? I promise I won't slather honey barbecue sauce on you and tell you to a chair, okay?
And no one's game?
No, they're not brave enough. In October of 2010, my Apache brother and I had a gathering. He called it Spirit Fest. And there were 15 people that descended on my family's place and camped out there. And every one of those people had a Sasquatch experience of some kind, more than one usually. And there were 5 people that actually saw them in person in the early morning light. And I'm sitting there going, it's your turn to look yourself in the mirror and call yourself crazy. Don't call me crazy anymore.
So I know you said you take photographs, and I know you've shown me a couple. Is there some that I can publish along with this interview that you'd be happy to do that?
Sure. Any photograph, do you still have the ones that I gave you, or would you like me to send them to you again, or?
No, I think I still have them. But if there's any additional ones, by
Uh,
all means, send them through.
I will give you one, and I can't validate this photograph, but what I can say about it is that it's so close to what I've seen in the daylight that there's no way that I'll dismiss it.
So you didn't
And
take the photograph personally.
no, that was somebody in in the Sequoia National Forest out in California that took that picture. But it's so identical to what I've seen in person. There's no way I'll dismiss it, and it's there in Skype chat if you'd like to save it.
Yep, got it.
And um, he was not that individual was not terribly happy about having his photograph taken without his permission, and so when you look at the photograph, you can see to the right of him and closer to the camera is a rock that he threw through the air at the man behind the camera.
Oh, yeah,
Now,
you have sent me that one before. Yep.
okay, I have sent. You can publish that one if you'd like.
Okay.
Then I've got my first photograph that I got back in 2008, where there's two looking at me, one of them with its mouth open. Did I send you that one?
No.
Let me go ahead and drop this in here. I'll send it to you two versions of that, one with outlines and one with no outlines whatsoever. I'll send you both those photographs, and you can publish them in YouTube as well. Add them to the interview here,
Will do.
so that people can see them. But all my information, all my recordings and photographs that I've taken, I share with everyone because I have no secrets. Part of the time that we're entering is that there will be no more secrets. Because when somebody thinks something,
We're already there.
yeah,
We're getting, yeah, that's happening all the time.
right.
That's why these
It's gonna it's
corporations are
gonna
being
be
exposed.
well, it's gonna be even more pronounced as we get to that point where we shift. Because you won't need telephones anymore. You'll be able to. You want to talk to somebody in Sydney, you just focus on them. Hey, are you awake yet? And start talking to them in your head because communication will be instant.
Oh, but we love our technology.
Oh, we have technology, but it's a false overlay because the human body, the skin suit that we live in, is the true technology.
Yes.
And so it's us coming back to our own awareness and more the totality of what we are coming into the skin suit and being able to use it. And I got pulled into a German talk show this last week, unbeknownst to me. A German woman asked me if I'd like to join the conversation. I said, okay, sure. And then when I got there, I was part of a German talk show. And so they were talking about being targeted individuals and having Morgellons.
Okay, yeah.
And I told them, I said, we've proven that the human body is programmable. I said, all you have to do is look around you. I mean, how many TV advertisements, magazine advertisements, newspaper advertisements do we see every day because they're trying to program us to buy this or buy that or do this or do that? So we know that the human body is programmable. Okay? So instead of letting them program us through television and newspaper and billboards and everything else, why don't we start programming ourselves with very simply saying whether something is acceptable or unacceptable, and then going from there? Because if we start programming ourselves, we will find that we no longer need doctors, we no longer need a grocery store, we no longer need certain things that they've gotten us to be dependent on because we'll be able to program ourselves, if that makes sense.
Hmm. So what was their discussion in regards to Morgellons? What was their? Do they believe that it's a result of chemtrail spraying and?
Chemtrails and other things that are going on in the environment. When your immune system gets down to a certain level, that's typically when Morgellons activates and starts growing things in your body. And so,
Because there's one theory that the people who are suffering from Morgellons are actually the ones with a stronger immune system that are rejecting it, and their bodies are expelling it. The rest of us who aren't expressing Morgellons, it's because our body's actually integrating all that stuff.
that has to do with the type of Morgellons that it is. as different and diverse as humans are, they've had to come up with as many different and diverse forms of Morgellons to do some of these things with. And so that also has to do with the type of Morgellons that they give you. But after I put that very simple concept out there, because I put it in the concept phase, not as fact or anything. All of a sudden, I had 7 friend requests on Skype. All of a sudden, from Spain and Germany and Portugal and United Kingdom, and just because I put it across in simple terms. And that's the only thing you'll ever hear me claim to be, is that I'm just a simple man. I don't try to be anything else.
Mm-hmm.
There's Bob Dean's wife told a very good story at one of the conferences that sums it up, and I repeat the story, and anybody can use it. There was a crow sitting in a field of grass, and a buffalo came along, and he looked down and he said, "What's wrong, little crow?" And the crow said, "Well, my body doesn't work right. I can't flap my wings anymore. I can't fly." And the buffalo said, "Well, I know what to do. If you will eat that right there for 3 days in a row, your body will start working right again, and you won't have to worry about it." And the crow looked at the stuff he was pointing at and looked back at the buffalo and said, "You've got to be crazy. That came from your backside. And you want me to eat it for 3 days?" And the buffalo said, "Well, you don't have to. Everybody has free will. But if you do, your body will work right again." And the crow said, "Well, I'm probably going to die anyway, so I'll go, what the heck, I'll go ahead and do it." And so the crow ate the BS for 3 days, and the buffalo came back to check on him, and he said, "How you feeling today, little crow?" And the crow said, "I feel much better. I feel almost like I did before, and I think I can fly. Do you mind standing here and waiting to see if I can fly?" And the buffalo said, "Sure." So the crow took off, and he was able to fly around, and he came back and landed on the buffalo's back. "Thank you, Mr. Buffalo. Thank you, thank you. I can't believe that works. That really did work." And the buffalo said, "Well, if you ever get feeling bad again, you know what to do now. Just come back and eat that for 3 days, and your body will work right, and you'll be fine." And he said, "Thank you, Mr. Buffalo," and he took off flying. A couple hours went by, and he started getting tired, so he landed in a tree. And he's so happy up there in that tree because he's away from danger, away from anything else, and he's just really enjoying the fact that his body works right again. And happy as can be, and he looks down and he sees a hunter down there on the ground. And he's so happy because he's up there in that tree and he's away from danger, and he doesn't have to worry with the hunter or anything else. And the hunter down on the ground looks up in the tree and sees the crow, and he says, "Oh my God, there's one of those birds that makes all that noise," and warns all the other animals in the woods that something's around. So he pulls the shotgun up and boom, shoots a crow. Crow falls down dead. And so the moral of the story is, BS can take you all the way to the top, but it won't keep you there.
And on that note,
You like that one, huh?
yep, sure, I do. Well, is there anything before we wrap this up? Is there anything that you haven't shared that you'd like to, that you want to make sure you get out there?
There is one thing I would like to share from your part of the world. About 3 or 4 months ago, I spoke with a woman in Alice Springs,
Mm-hmm.
and she was having difficulty in an area there in Alice Springs. And so I was talking to her through Facebook, and I began describing to her through Facebook the gully that she goes to and feels the calling of the land there, and how the gully never goes dry, even in the drought season, because it's fed by hot springs. And I really began giving a lot of details about that area in Alice Springs that she goes to. And she said, "How do you know all this stuff?" And I'm like, I don't know all this stuff. And what I'm trying to make you aware of is that you're not the only one feeling the calling. The Yowie people are there, and they're telling me and showing me that area through Mindspeak. And so there were 3 Yowies, 2 females and a male, that were in that area. And I said, if you're just aware that they're there and work with them, things will go much smoother. But there's times when you're interfering with the work that they're doing, so it's causing interference in the work that you're doing. So an agreement or understanding has to come into play here in order for you to do the work that you feel the land calling you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was really kind of shocking to her because here I am in Texas and I was communicating with the Yowie all the way over there in Alice Springs, Australia. I'm not sure where Alice Springs is at, New South Wales, or where it's at.
It's right in the middle.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So, but that's who I was talking to, and that went on, and she thought that I was going to be upset when she opened the dialogue with the Aborigine elders. And she was rather surprised when she found out how happy I was that she did open the dialogue with them. And I said, why would I be upset? Why would I ever be upset about you going to people that know more, obviously know more than I do about that land because they live there? I said, just think of me as a stepping stone or a bridge to get you where you need to go. That's all I am. And she's working with the Aborigines, and they're taking care of things over there in Alice Springs. Apparently, there's some harp things or other things the benevolent government is doing in that area that's causing distress within the land. So,
There's a few things going on. That's because Pine Gap's right there.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I've been getting information about what's going on in there too. And there's also a huge mine that the Aboriginals are trying to get closed down, because one of the signs we were talking about being event driven, one of the events took place that they were waiting on, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along the lines of when the lizard, when the great lizard spews blood from its belly, it's had enough. And a couple of months ago, that mine very suddenly just spewed this red dust that took everyone by surprise, and the whole mine was scattered. And that was the sign. And so they're trying to have it closed down. That area has had enough. There's stuff going on there that is being dealt with on a number of levels.
Well, and something else that and I'm just talking about my own experiences. That was one of them. Not long after that, Tolik connected me with a woman in Alberta, Canada. And so I told Tolik, I said, yeah, here's my phone number, here's my Skype address. Go ahead and give her all that and tell her to call me if she wants to. So she did. And she asked me if I could communicate with her horses. I said, I don't know. I began talking with her, and I described all four of her horses to a T. And she wasn't upset by this or dismayed or anything. She was actually laughing. And she goes, when I get off work today, I'm actually going to take pictures of my horses just so you can see what you just described to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so she did, and I've got all four horses' pictures right here on my computer, and they're identical to what I was describing. The matriarch female, I couldn't tell what color brown she was. I can't tell if she's light brown or if she's dark brown. And she goes, you just have to wait and see the picture. And I said, okay. So when I got the picture, she's got really dark brown legs, almost black. Then the middle of her body, or most of her body, is a light brown. And then as you get towards the neck and the head, it goes back to that dark brown again. And I said, well, no wonder I was confused. I couldn't lock in on what color brown she is, because she's all those color browns. Okay, never mind. So my communication is not limited to the Sasquatch people or the hairy folks, as I call them. If I focus my intention and just allow it to come in, I can communicate with almost anything. So
Actually, I do have one final question on the Sasquatch.
Sure.
You've mentioned the female Shona, her partner, and an elderly male, and the fact that Shona and a partner have had a child. That's 4. Is there a larger community, or
yes.
are they loners? Do they?
Well, the thing that I had to deal with, and part of my experiences, and it's an ongoing thing. Down there in my family's place now, I have to deal with what I call the Cajun Squatch, which are Sasquatch from Louisiana, because just about all of southern Louisiana was abandoned by their people after BP had their uh, debacle in the Gulf of Mexico right there off Baton Rouge.
Mm-hmm.
The land and the water and the animals are so polluted with things right now that the Sasquatch people left and they came to Texas and went to Arkansas and also Oklahoma. So there was a population increase, and um, I usually take things like that. I just put it on the back burner and let it simmer until it tastes right, or see if it's going to spoil, whatever, however you want to look at it. And then I had a woman in Houston call me and begin asking me questions. She goes, "Have you felt anything energetically from the hairy folks?" And I said, "Can you be a little more specific?" And she said, "Like a population increase." I'm like, here we go, validation. And then a woman in Oklahoma, she called me and we were talking, and the same thing came up. Not inspired by me. She brought that up on her own. So there was another point of validation. And then I've had a woman over in northern Mississippi that asked me the same thing, or basically brought up the same thing, and we talked. So everybody was feeling this in the community that I run in. There's a very quiet community of people that have interactions or experiences on a continuous basis with the hairy folks, and they just don't open their mouth very much because we take so much ridicule from the people that say that's impossible. Really? Okay. So we just keep our mouth shut.
Well, there may come a story in the near future out of Australia because apparently, according to a woman who does communicate with the Yowie here, the fracking that is going on, there's an area in northern New South Wales where it's encroaching on Yowie territory, and the only way to get it stopped is for the Yowie to come out and go public and make their presence known. And pretty much nothing short of that would put a stop to it anyway. So that's still being debated, from what I understand.
Well, one of the Yowies that I spoke with quite a bit was rather fascinating. There's a Yowie female, and can I say this? Okay, I'll say
I
it.
don't know.
No, I'm asking them.
Okay.
Can I say this? And I got a yes on that. Her name is Zela. Zela is the way I spell it, Zela.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fascinated. She was showing me the type of stone and the type of mud that she uses together. She'll grind the stone up, combine it with the mud or a certain type of dirt and some water, and make some kind of white or cream-colored paint that she puts on her face before she does the Dreamtime magic. I'm like, I thought the Aborigines did the Dreamtime magic. And she said, who do you think they learned it from? I'm like, okay, never mind.
Ah. Well, yeah, because they do the same thing. They make up a white paste to paint on
Yeah,
themselves.
it's kind of a white or you might call it a light cream color.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's what she makes. And so she was showing me that. I'm like, okay. Her and I talked quite extensively back in 2010. We talked quite a few times. But she was as surprised by me as I was by her, because I'm like, you're all the way across the big water over there. And she goes, well, you're all the way across the big water over there. I'm like, so what are you going to help me do? She goes, I'm going to help you calm down some. I said, what do you mean calm down some? She goes, you still get a little bit too excited about interacting with our kind, and it's not a big deal. And I'm like, okay, all right, we can do this. And so it just kind of went that way. And Zila was a big help at a time when things were a little confusing for me, but she helped calm me down about certain things. So I was fine with it.
Well, I think it's a big deal. I'd be excited, personally. Actually, the way that you can communicate with, well, pretty much anybody or anything. I mean, I don't know, this has just occurred to me. What about a live program where we had people call in and and asked you to communicate, whether it was with an animal, a pet, a plant that's near their house, or um, anything that they may be wanting to communicate with. Are you up for something like that?
Sure, I'd be happy to do something like that.
Okay, great.
And I also want to say on that note, the movie K-Pax with Jeff Bridges and Kevin Spacey. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
Oh, a long time ago, yeah.
Well, when Kevin Spacey talks to the golden retriever at their house, okay, kids, she can't hear good out of the left ear, so don't sneak up at her. When he was telling them everything that the dog was, which she really doesn't like it when you hide her favorite pair of shoes, and he's on and on. I was sitting there laughing so hard because I've heard that same thing from animals where they're telling me stuff, and I'm like, I'm not saying anything, okay? You're gonna have to find some way to let the humans you interact with know, because I'm not gonna say anything. And I've gone through that same thing, and that's why I was laughing so hard, because I've gone through that same thing before, and I'm just laughing away on that one. So yeah, it really is like that at times, and I'm certainly not the only one that can do that. I'm just one person out of how many billion are on this planet?
Yeah, 7+.
Yeah. So there's quite a few people that are able to do that kind of stuff, and it gets interesting at times. There's a guy in Kansas that has photographs that he posts every once in a while on, it's called shadowfolk.com, of the Sasquatch people. And there's one where there's a blur flying across the trail, the blur of a Sasquatch body as he's leaping across the trail. You also see about 15 or 20 dogs, dogs that we cast off over here, stray dogs, all the way from German Shepherds down to there was a Chihuahua running wide open trying to cross that trail and follow the Sasquatch. So the things we cast off, they just take in as part of their family, and it just goes like that. That's I know that guy. He lives in near Topeka, Kansas, and he's got some very interesting photographs. Some of the hairy folks that live in Kansas. Um, he's even talked with some of the farmers that plant rows of corn over near trees growing in the middle of the field, and he's like, "Why are you planting corn over there?" And the farmer said, "Well, it's not for me." "What do you mean it's not for you?" "Well, there's other people that enjoy my corn, so I go ahead and plant more corn just for them so that they'll leave the main crop alone." So there's farmers out there that plant extra vegetables or extra rows of stuff because they're sharing it with the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch.
Well, yes. Why wouldn't you share?
That's right.
That's it. Okay, well, thanks again, Thomas.
I hope that somebody starts asking questions because of this, because it's all about raising our awareness.
Absolutely. Definitely. There's more out there than we can possibly imagine, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, good talking to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.